Oh my gosh. See that right there. Dan, I'm glad you brought this up because people throw that word around all the
Yeah,
time, don't they? They're like,
exactly.
students are engaged. I need something more engagement. Student engagement is a high priority for us. And we're like, what does that mean? Because to some people, I've said, I'll answer your question here in a second, but it's like to some people, it's like some people think student engagement is like fun and exciting and let's dress up in costumes and let's play games and stuff like that. To some people, Philip Schlechty's definition of engagement has to do with like challenging students at a level that is, like interesting and like you have that intrinsic drive to continue forward. And so that can be, like deep, intense work, which is a little bit different than sort of the superficial, let's just make class fun, which there's benefit to that. I'm not discounting that or anything. Some people say that, if students are engaged, that means that it's a quiet classroom and they're working on things. Other people say that if students are engaged, then you can hear it and there's like a palpable excitement in the air and everything. And it's like, what are we really talking about here? And see, to me, I think for in my own classes, there's a little bit of an element of several of those. I think that for students to be engaged in the work, it has to be they have to see the reason for it. They have to be on board, and they have to kind of know the why. Why are we doing this? And it has to matter to them. And sometimes to get to that, you do the fun stuff. We make it learning interesting.
Hmm.
There's like an interesting creative hook to it, or the way that you're practicing is unique or different or something. I think you can get to engagement that way. But there's really, to me, that's sort of like the big picture. What is the purpose of us showing up in this classroom together? What are we all trying to accomplish and get at? And if students don't, if they're not on board with it, or if they if it doesn't match their own motivations, then a lot of that other stuff doesn't really work. You got to get to that, I think you got to get to that motivation part at the root.
And that's a great, that's great too, because I'm right there with you. It's all about having that balance as well, right? Because
Mhm.
you're not saying worksheets are stupid, worksheets are bad. We're not saying that. There's a neat time and a place. You're not saying that standing in front of the room lecturing is a bad thing either.
No.
Sometimes you got to do it. So it's all about
Yeah.
balance, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's, and if you think about, because some folks, come at this with the nuance of a sledgehammer, and they'll say, I hate worksheets. Worksheets are terrible. Worksheets are
Yeah.
awful. And I'm like, yeah, but what is a worksheet exactly? It's a lot of times, on those sheets, it's got questions. And if the questions are not good, then yeah, it can be kind of worthless and pointless and everything. But if it like leads you on a series of thoughts that are all chained together that gets you to a destination and changes your way of thinking or helps you understand something better, then they're worthwhile. And it's like if it's questions on a paper worksheet or on a digital worksheet or on a Kahoot game or whatever, really, it all comes back to what are we trying to accomplish? I see a lot of the same sort of flawed thinking in all of the, like screen time debates that are going
Hmm.
on right now. How much is the right amount of technology? How much is the right amount of screen time? It's kind of like asking, it's kind of like the same question of, are questions on paper better than questions on a document? I'm like, honestly, I don't really care. I just want to know about the questions. Like, are the questions good? Is the thinking good? What are we trying to get students to do here? And, when it comes down to, the concept of worksheets, the concept of screen time or whatever, it all comes back to that concept of, is the instruction well designed? Is it, designed to get students where they need to go? And if it's not, then it really doesn't matter if you're doing it on paper or on a document or on a game or whatever.